Hello, I know some of you are going, I didn't know he was speaking. I would have stayed home. I'm sorry. I was all ready to go last week and we canceled, and I'd love to tell you it's going to be 1 week better, but it won't be. So here we are. Well, I am thrilled. We're finishing up a series called Clue, Taking the Mystery Out of Life. And I want to share something with you today that it probably is what stagnates most of us in our faith. It's probably the thing that maybe makes most of us stop growing spiritually. And so that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And it's going to sound really simple. When you think about playing games like the game of Clue, and you might remember when your kids were little, and you might still have little kids, they get out the game and they put all the pieces out, and that's half the battle. You get all the pieces in place, you play the game, and then what do the kids want to do? They want to play another game. And so you get out another board game and you put that one out, and you start to get all the pieces, and you get all those pieces out, and you start playing that game, and then halfway through that game, they're like, I'm bored, let's do something different. And so they go, I want to play this game. And so you bring out another board game. And by now you got 3 or 4 board games, toss in some Legos, and you got a battlefield in the middle of your front living room, right? Isn't that how it works? Do the kids want to say, I can't wait to clean up, it's going to be so much fun? Do kids do that? No. They want to go, I'm done with this, I'm moving on. And we kind of get upset with our kids. You got to come back in here and clean up this mess. But we as adults and young adults, we do the same thing. We maybe start in, maybe it's your college age, and you get a job and the money sounds really great and you're all excited and you go buy a new car, and then that decision of buying a new car now makes you have to work more, and then next thing you don't really like your job and you want to change jobs, but now you got a car to deal with, you got to deal with the payment, and you moved out and you got an apartment. You meet this person, they're just really, really special, and you think they're the one, and they find out they want another one. And you're now heartbroken, and it's just kind of messy, and we rarely take time to clean up the mess. Then we get older, and the things just get bigger. We have kids, and we want to make everything perfect for them, but in the process of things, we think, I'm going to make everything perfect for this kid. I work so many jobs and hours that I don't ever see my kids, and then that creates tension between your kids and your spouse, and it just starts building, and it becomes messy. And we fail normally to stop and clean up the mess. Well, that's what I want to talk with you about today. The other problem that most of us run into when we run into this messy situation is we don't want to deal with our own mess. And that is one of our biggest struggles. Like, I don't want to deal with my mess. And so we walk away from our own mess. Sometimes we go, I'm just going to leave that living room I'll just close the door on that one and we'll just sell the house that way, We're never going to clean that room up. That room's done. Just close it. Find another room of the house to mess up later. And that's sometimes how we kind of do life. We just walk away from our mess. But we can't keep doing that, can we? Many of us, our lack of growth is one, we've walked away from too many of our own messes, and we haven't learned how to walk through our own mess and how to clean up our own mess. Look at this passage. This is out of Proverbs 24:10. Look at this passage. It says this. Oh, hold on. I forgot to tell you. There might be some emotionally triggering moments today. Okay? If you're emotionally triggered, this passage is going to start you off. Here we go. If you fall to pieces in a crisis, there wasn't much to you in the first place. Now, you'd expect to see that like in a military recruitment center, maybe. But that's in the Bible. That is really straightforward and harsh, isn't it? And it's kind of this mentality that many of us, we've been going to church for years and years and years. You've been sitting here week after week, and you haven't dealt with your own mess, which has kept you from doing what we're really called to do, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is dealing with the messes of other people. But we'll get to that in a minute. I want to rest here for a second. Let me kind of give you an illustration. I've shared with you guys, I love to tell cop stories because it's the only reason I kind of do it. I get to a good message material. I'm a reserve sheriff deputy. I get to go play cop a couple times a month. I'm not like those guys that risk it every day of the week. I'm just a reserve. I go a couple times. But if every year I have to go through this training, it's called your yearly mandates, your state mandates. And part of it, you have to go through domestic violence, training. You have to go how to deal with kids with autism training. And then maybe you have this at your own job. You have to do CPR and first aid. How many people you have to, that's part of your job description. You have to do that, right? Okay. Well, I've been doing this now for 14 years, and every year we have almost the exact same training. And every year I have to do CPR training. And I'll be honest, after 14 years of sitting there for 2 hours going through the exact same material, matter of fact, how many people know the video? What song do they use to teach you? Who's what? Staying alive. Staying alive, That's the song you're supposed to be doing compressions. And we've been doing it, most of us, a lot of the old-timer guys like me, been at 14 years, you're actually doing it as you're practicing and stuff. And it's just kind of a joke now to us a lot of times. And, you want to take it serious, but you've been hearing it for so many years, you've been doing it for so long, and I've never really used it. Never had to really use it. I actually usually, in my mind, I hear calls like that come out, and the fire department usually beats us there. We're like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like that. I've had a few moments like, oh, good, they got there first. Well, early December, we were at a call. I had just left this house, and they had to take one of the kids. The family had an emergency. They had to go to the hospital. Dad took the daughter to the hospital. Mom was home with her college-age daughter. Leave the house, and I'm not telling you, more than 5 minutes later, we get a call right back to that house. Well, guess who was the closest that day? Me, because I just left there. And I'm like, just go, cardiac arrest. And I'm thinking, I might be there first. And so I'm thinking through, okay, compressions. Staying alive. And I'm trying to think that through. I'm trying to get all this in my head. What do I do next if I get there? What if I really have to do it this time? And I get there, and the daughter in her mid-20s, early 20s, came out yelling, screaming, you got to save my mom. You got to save my mom. She's dead. She's dying. And I go in the room, and this is one of those triggering moments for me because it's still kind of too fresh. Go in the room, and she was gray, and she was gurgling. Air was escaping. And the daughter just screaming, you got to save her. You got to save her. Don't let my mom die. So you got to kick into, okay, training. 14 years of training for this moment. I'm like, can I do this? I have to. So grab her. I'm trying. She's on a bed, and I start doing compressions. What's the first thing you have to do when you have to do compressions? Does anybody remember one of the first rules? What's one of the first? Okay, that's before that even. She was on a bed. Hard surface. You got to get them on a hard surface. So I reach under the woman, and she was at my age. She was in her late 40s, early 50s. And I reach under her, and it was really, really wet. I'm going to say it was sweat in my mind. I want to tell you it was sweat. And I pull her off, and then you got to pull. And when they say dead weight's a lot of weight. It's really tough to do. And so I'm pulling, I'm tugging, I'm trying to get her off. And then I want to make sure that I don't just hey, she lifted her heart, but her head cracked on the floor and killed her. You know what that is. So I'm pulling her off and trying to capture her. I know this is kind of a tragic thing. This might be triggering for you, but this is just the reality of what you do. So I'm pulling her off, and I'm trying to capture her head. And I started doing chest compressions. And I wasn't going, staying alive, because the daughter would have smacked me. And I'm doing compressions. And I'm just thinking, I don't know if she's going to live. My hands are wet with something, and I'm doing this, and the whole time I'm just praying, will the fire department please get here quicker? I would like to say I'm a hero. I was in my head, I'm going, please God, let her live. Please God, let the fire department get here soon. Because I don't know how much. So it was very quick that they got there. And I was very, really thrilled. I don't know how long it was. It kind of blends together. I did the whole deal. They came in, they took over and started doing it, and they started bringing all their other fancy equipment in, and they started doing some amazing stuff. I was amazed at what they were doing. They got the compressed bagging her and all that, and shots, and then she took on 6 shocks. So those electrical shocks. I'd never really seen it done on a person, seen it in training. And the reason I'm sharing all this is because sometimes some of us are so trained, but we've never used what we've been trained to do. I can tell you that the next time that call comes out, I'll still be scared. I'll still be freaking out. But I'll still go. It won't be as big of a deal this next time as it was the first time. Now, my problem with this is many of us have been sitting in training now for 14, 15, 20, 60 years, and you've never used what you've been taught. And you still sit here each week, taking on more training, and you wonder why your faith's not growing. It's because you've never had to use what you've been trained to do. Matter of fact, look at this passage here. Let's go. Often we hear that we want to do this. We want to walk the other way from others' messes. That's sometimes what we want to do. We want to hear that call come out for cardiac arrest, and because we are dealing with the heart, but a deep, bigger heart than a physical heart, we're dealing with the spiritual heart of people, and we want to walk away, and that is the challenge that many of us face, and that's why our faith has not grown. We want to walk away before we see what we're supposed to be doing. Here's this is a continuation of the passage I just shared a few minutes ago. So I must read this for you real quick. It says, if you fall to pieces in a crisis, there wasn't much to you in the first place. And then it starts in this passage. It says this, rescue the perishing. Don't hesitate to step in and help. If you say, hey, that's none of my business, will that get you off the hook? Someone is watching you closely, Someone not impressed with weak excuses. You just want to pull the dagger out of your heart after reading this? got done reading this, I go, this is in the Bible? This is kind of mean. This is kind of straightforward. This is triggering my emotions. But it's right out of Scripture. And this isn't here to guilt trip anyone here today. This is just really a call to arms, a call to let's do something greater. The passage, here's the next, read this one. This one's out of 1 Peter 3:8. It says, summing up, be agreeable, be sympathetic, be loving, be compassionate, be humble. That goes for all of you, no exceptions. No retaliation, no sharp-tongued sarcasm. Instead, bless. That's your job, to bless. You'll be a blessing and also get a blessing. Now, it's a long passage, but let's just point out a few things in this passage. I can sit there and bicker about why you got yourself into the mess you're in. And I can spend my time saying you deserve everything you're getting, but that's not what God called us to do. Be agreeable. Be sympathetic. We've all had mistakes. We've all made messes of our lives at some point in time. Let's be honest, and this might be a triggering moment for some people. Some of you have caused your own problems. Really? Can we all agree on that? Don't always blame somebody. You caused some of your problems. There were decisions you made. I don't want to go to college, and this person did, and they're doing it, and you made the decision. It was your choice. Some of the things that you deal with, you did make a decision. You didn't decide where you're born. You didn't decide what family you're born into. You didn't choose that your parents were alcoholics. You didn't choose that your parents didn't have any money to send you to college. And so we're dealing with both ends of this. We have the self-inflicted, and we have the things that we had no power to control, and we're in this mess. And we can sit there and try picking through people's lives if we help. Well, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this. Oh, that person, so they were bad people. And we can spend all this time going through this. But that's not what God called us to do. Be agreeable, be sympathetic, be compassionate, be humble. No sharp-tongued lashing outs, because that's what I want to do. I hear people's story, and I'm like, well, you did this to yourself, loser, That's what I want. It's not what God called me to do, though. And it's a battle I have within, and that's what's holding me back in my faith. So this last line is the one I really want to focus on. You will be a blessing and also get a blessing. Why isn't God doing something for me, then I'll go give it away? Is that how it worked in this passage? I go be a blessing, then I'll get a blessing. Now, this isn't a works thing, this isn't about that, but it's the idea that when I'm willing to do what God's called me to do, God's going to do what He said He's going to do too, and He's going to give me a blessing in the midst of that. It doesn't work the other way around sometimes. I can't just sit back and wait for God to bless me. God, I'm so good, bless me. Where are you at, God? Didn't you see what I thought? Didn't you see how good I am? Bless me. It doesn't work that way. And that's why we struggle. Now, you might say, well, why do we often struggle to help people with their messes? And we're going to talk about 3 ways of that, 3 reasons why we don't move towards the mess. And the first one's going to be so stinking obvious, but it's going to be also one of those that is probably the biggest barrier. And the first one is this: convenience. Dealing with messy people is inconvenient. Listen to this. It says, you'll know you are too busy when messy people are inconveniences rather than opportunities. Just let that sink in. How many inconvenient messes have you walked past, avoided, scheduled off your calendar, so that you could accomplish something else that you felt was important? This one here is probably the toughest one to get through. This one here causes us to have to look through our own priority list. It makes us have to look through our own lives and consider, is what I'm striving for what God's striving for? As a church, are we striving for this? Are we striving to get big numbers? Are we striving for new buildings? Are we not that those things are bad. They're actually usually a product of the growth of people growing in the church and being this mentality that people are no longer inconveniences, but they're opportunities to share Christ. In your workplace, there's a lot of inconvenient, messy people. And you want to write them off. you do it. You make sure your lunch schedule doesn't match up with theirs because you don't really want to have lunch with them. You walk around the other different hallways so you don't have to go around that person. Maybe your friends, you've unfriended some people that were in the middle of a mess. When people become inconveniences and not opportunities, you're missing what God called you to do. Didn't see you, us. This is just as easy for me. In the scenario of me doing CPR on this lady, it was messy. It was not what I really wanted to do that night. I didn't want to have urine all over my arms. There were things I saw after the fire department got there that I wish I could unsee because I hate needles. And they're just jabbing her with needles. They're shoving needles in her arm. They're shoving needles in her legs. They're shoving tubes down. And I'm just like, I wish I could unsee this. But I can't. But we can't see that as an inconvenient moment because the value of what you're doing is greater than whatever else you had on your calendar and your priority list, the saving of a heart, the saving of a life. And I'm talking spiritual. Second reason is this, comfort. If we insist on comfortable, boredom is inevitable. Let that sink in. If we insist on comfortable, boredom is inevitable. There is no way that if you've been in your spiritual life and you've been walking along with God, you said, I've been following God for years and years, and you're bored, you're comfortable. That's probably the reason. And so a challenge would be this, what is it that I could do that would be uncomfortable, but it would open me up to seeing God work in my life? This is a tough one. Look at this next verse. This says, we will never meet the best version of ourselves in our comfort zones. And this is just tough stuff to kind of take in, just concepts to deal with. Because many of us have been sitting in these very chairs for 3 years now. And if I honestly ask you how many people you've given CPR to, you'd say 0. Or I thought about it that one time. I was really close that other time. I did that one thing, but it didn't really do much. So I didn't do it ever again because that was weird and gross. It kind of freaked me out. Most of the time, we want to be comfortable. We do everything we can in our worlds. We buy devices to make our lives more comfortable and convenient. In God's economy, in God's kingdom, comfort doesn't come here. It's later. It might come spiritually comfort, but the creature comfort's like, hey, I'm just going to live in my big house. I'm going to close the doors. I'm going to put my garage door down so nobody can come up and talk to me. I'm just going to stay to myself. Those days are over if you're a Christ follower. Those days are over. Comfort is the number 2 reason we stay and don't grow in our faith. We want to be comfortable. Number 3. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to share a passage with you on that last one. Let me go back. Sorry. This is out of 1 Peter 8 also. It says, who is going to harm you if you're eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Back to that blessing word again. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. Read it again to yourself. Silence is uncomfortable, isn't it? But here we go. You might suffer. But would you rather suffer for doing good or wrong? Good. There's a purpose to it. You might think you're comfortable, but really, to be honest, you're lulling yourself to sleep. You're lulling yourself to not be effective in what God wants to do in your life. And this is where a lot of us spend our time, comfortable, because we're afraid that if I go do something bad might happen. It might destroy my comfort zone. It might wreck my system. It might affect my entire family if I do this. But wouldn't it be really cool for your kids to see you reach out and do something awesome for someone else? What they'll learn and grow from that? Are your kids looking for you to be the comfort in a perfect little comfort zone? Or would you rather them to see the exciting life of seeing God work through you, God work through them eventually? But when we say comfortable, your kids don't see any of that. Your family doesn't see any of that. Your coworkers don't see any of that. They just see you just like everyone else, just sitting there being comfortable. The third reason that we struggle is control. I am one of those people likes taking on something and finishing it. I'm not good at it, but I like the idea. I wish I could start. How many people started a home project, had to call someone else to finish it? Come on, raise hands. There we go. Thank you. We're the only ones in here. Oh my gosh. I think a bunch of liars in this room is what I think. Or I should say or should I ask this question? How many still have projects at home that aren't finished? There we go. I was right. I would have called you liars too quick. You just haven't got smart enough to let someone else do it yet. No, that's bad. I shouldn't call you not smart. So that's kind of the mentality. We want to start something and see it finished very quickly. We want to have control of the situation. But the problem is, and this is against a lot of us business-minded people, or people who are task-oriented. People aren't projects. You can try making them, but you're going to be highly disappointed in life. You have kids that you did your best on, and they made decisions that were so silly and stupid that you're like, I can't believe this kid came from me. They're not projects. You can't pencil in when everything's going to happen in their life. You can't pencil in their decisions. They're not projects. And this is frustrating for a lot of us. Here's the other biggest issue we do. When we have something, what's the first thing when you start a project in the business world? You got to have a deadline. Here's your timeline on getting this done. Here's your deadline. And if you don't have that done by the deadline, someone's going to be in trouble. Heads are going to roll if we don't get this done by this deadline. We're going to lose thousands of dollars if we're not done by this deadline. And so here's our issue. We gauge success in minutes, hours, and days. God gauges successes over a lifetime and generations. People aren't projects to be put on a timeline, and if they don't meet the deadline, we're done. That is a concept that we have to kind of get on right. When you look biblically, and you look at, we look at the Bible and we go, wow, this is all a cool book. It must have lasted, 2 or 3 years to get all this done? How many years is it from start to finish in the Bible? Thousands of years. There were kings and pharaohs that got into their position, took them years to figure it out. And matter of fact, it was their next generation that figured it out and what they did wrong and did it better. It's a book about generations. We have to gauge our success with people, not on the hours, minutes, and days, but on the lifetime of that person, and maybe the impact they're going to have on the next generation. Maybe if one person in that family gets saved, the next generation will know Christ. Then that generation is going to say, you see how it definitely just snowballs. But it starts with the one person. And it might take that person years. How many of you guys accepted Christ in middle school or high school, but didn't take your faith serious until you're after college? Mine was a little quicker. I accepted Christ when I was like 13, but I can't say I took it serious until I was a freshman in college, maybe even a sophomore in college, before I really understood what it meant to serve. It's generations. Your job and your role might be just that one moment, that one person. You might think, what I'm about to do is not a big deal. To be honest, guys, I pushed on that lady's chest. I don't even know if I was doing it right. I don't know. I don't know if what I did helped at all. I don't know if I had the right technique, if I was pushing deep enough. I don't know. But I know I was there. And I know she's still alive. No, don't follow me, because I had nothing to do. I was just one little part. That's what I'm trying to say. That was one little part. I just pushed on her chest for about 4 or 5 minutes. But that might have been 4 or 5 minutes that did save her. You know what I mean? And so you might think, well, all I'm going to do is just this one little thing. But that one little thing might be enough to get her to the point where the people who maybe know a little bit more can take over and do a little bit more. And then those, you know what those guys did? They got her ready to transport her, and then they took her to the doctors, and this is going to be funny. They froze her. They did this thing called cryogenics, and they basically froze her. They put her in this, they lowered her body temperature. Now, my mom always told me, don't go outside, you'll get sick. They froze this lady, and she lived. I'm going to tell my mom she's wrong. So she's alive. She's a miracle. And it wasn't just me. It was a number of people doing what they'd been called to do. And they had basically, this is the end result. If we can save enough individuals, we can cause a movement. If all of us got on board with creating and being willing to save other people, we could create a movement. Matter of fact, this. We could be a critical mass, could change how people see the church and God. We have a problem with society right now, guys. We're not seen highly of right now. And some of it is completely self-inflicted. It's completely justified. We as a church, we have to get back to the basics of blessing other people, getting uncomfortable, being inconvenienced, losing control and giving control to God sometimes, because we want to see God's image change to the people around us. And it takes all of us, because you know how much? It only takes one of us to be a complete fool to destroy the reputation of everybody. Isn't that the truth? We have to change that. We have to start becoming the people that are really blessing other people and then receiving the blessing. As I kind of shared, the sequence of interacting rarely is it one person. Next slide, I'm sorry. Sequence of people interacting, rarely one person. This is my thought I was trying to get to earlier. It's usually one person does their part, the next person does their part. I didn't know if the fire department was going to save her. All I knew is I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was trained to do. I didn't know the end result. It wasn't up to me. I didn't know what the final, if she was going to live, die. Be honest, I thought she was going to die. I really did. They were shocking her, shoving effort up in her body. They were doing all this stuff trying to save her. I didn't think it was going to work or matter. She was great when I found her. The fact that she's alive is a miracle. But it took the interactions of this person doing their small part, the paramedics and the EMTs doing their parts, the doctors doing their parts, and most importantly, God did his part. I'm just one cog in the wheel. I'm just one little thing. But the problem is, if this part doesn't happen, I don't know. By the time the fire department could have got there, they might have just called the coroner. I don't know. It's not my job to know. I'm just one person. In a sequence of people interacting with the person that you're trying to help, you're just maybe one person. I've sat with some of you in your living rooms, and I've sat there and looked at you and said, I can listen, but I don't know how to help. I don't know what to do. But maybe sometimes listening is the best thing. So let's move before I get that far. Let's go this. Moving towards the mess will take us from boredom to engaged. Many of us have been disengaged with God for a while. We go to church, but we're disengaged. Do you look at the church overall, the American church, a lot of people go to church, but they're disengaged with what God's doing. And we got to change that. Look at this passage out of 1 Peter also. It says this, through thick and thin, keep your hearts at attention. Now, my military guys, what's it mean to be at attention? Alert. Ready to roll. Ready to go. Understanding who's in the room. Understanding what the circumstances are. We're supposed to be at attention at all times. It goes on, it says this. Keep your hearts at attention in adoration of Christ your master. Be ready to speak up and tell anyone who asks why you're living the way you are, and always with the utmost courtesy. We've lost some of that last part, but we're supposed to be at attention. We're supposed to be ready to go. Some of you have been training for a long time. It's time to respond to the call of cardiac arrest around you. There's a lot of broken hearts in your workplace. There's broken hearts in your family. There's broken hearts. And you can run the other way, but when we go back to that first verse, it says, if you fall to pieces in a crisis, there wasn't much to you in the first place. That's a tough passage. We're not meeting every Sunday morning just to have a good time together. We're here to worship God and to be trained and prepared and be ready when the next crisis happens. And we can't wait for the big ones. Sometimes we take on the small crisis even. I did my little part. There's a few things you got to be cautious about. And these are going to be some things I just want to warn you about. It's easy to jump into all this stuff, but here's some warnings. Caution. Move towards a mess, not every mess. Some pastors I know, they've destroyed their marriages and their lives and their family lives because they were running after every mess instead of running after a mess. Pick one that you have the most direct contact with and do your part. Next one. Respond out of compassion, not guilt or fear. Anybody who's had an 8-year-old, you can say, you're going to be grounded, or I'm going to spank you, and they respond like, no, don't do that, Dad. When they're 18, they look you in the eye and go, I don't care. Try it. You know what I mean? Fear and guilt only work up to a certain point. We don't follow out of those fear and guilt. It is to be the compassion, as the verse we read earlier. We're supposed to be compassionate because we want to bless them, so we get blessed, so we can grow in our faith. I am supposed to be able to reach out to them and do it out of, I have a heart for this person. I have a heart for God. God has a heart for this, a bigger heart for this person. Not out of, man, I feel a little guilty. Or, man, I'm afraid if I don't. That's not a way to respond. People don't follow for very long out of fear and guilt. They follow out of compassion and a calling by something greater than themselves. Don't wait for perfect conditions and miss out on God's provisions. If you're waiting for your life to be perfect before you help someone else, you're not going to make it. You're going to be sitting here for another 20 years and doing nothing. It's never going to happen. Next one. Don't wait for, you don't have to get your act together first, which kind of ties in with what I just said. There's a long line of messy people in the Bible. A long, long line of messy people in the Bible who God used to do greater things they ever imagined. There's no reason it can't be you, us, as a church. There's little tiny churches that have turned into major movements in society. There's no reason it can't be us. It will be inconvenient, uncomfortable, and out of control at times. But this is the thing. If not you, then who? If I don't do my part in that scenario, they might be calling the coroner. If you don't respond to those messes in your world and the messes around you, if we don't respond as a church to the messes in our world and in our community and within our own body, then who? Who's going to do it? There's going to be a lot of other frivolous, superficial stuff that's going to kind of sneak in and take a little bit of moment, and they're going to have a little flash, and they're going to look like they're helping, but they're not really there for the right reason. They're going to address one little need, but not address the spiritual needs. It's the church's calling to be the who. It's our calling to do that. Because here's the thing. If you are a Christ follower, I hate to break this news to you, God moves towards the mess. And you're going to get in the middle of it sooner or later. If you're following him, that's where he's going. He looked for messy people and then saw amazing things happen through their lives. So how do I help messy people? Going back to our clue game, the main objective of the game Clue, and this is the board game Clue, is this. I find out who, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. I apologize. Let me help messy people. Let me do this. Be there to listen. Don't try a quick fix. Ask deeper questions. And that's what I was leading to, I was getting ready to talk about. We have to be there is probably sometimes the most important thing. That might be your biggest CPR you ever give somebody, just being there to listen. Also, I have a friend about 2 weeks ago. I won't call a friend, it's not somebody I interact with all the time, but she killed herself a couple weeks ago. She shot herself. She was a former reserve sheriff deputy with me. Started at the same time. I don't know what happened. I'm sure there were some mental health issues, but If someone would have been there to listen, how would things have changed? Obviously, she felt isolated, alone. I don't know. Don't try a quick fix. This isn't an assignment. They're not a project. Ask deeper questions, because superficial questions grow superficial relationships. Your marriages sometimes are superficial because you only talk about superficial stuff. Your coworker relationship with your coworkers are superficial because that's all you ever talk about. Superficial, the game, the dumb stuff in life, you might say. Deeper questions lead to answers. And this is what I was trying to get to a second ago. You got to help them get a clue. And what I mean by this, in the board game of Clue, the objective of the game is to find out who the killer is, where it took place, and what was the weapon of choice. Those are the three things of the game. Who, what was the weapon, and where. Once you find that, it's game over. Our job sometimes to help people is to help them decide, to help them ask deeper questions and find out, who's the killer? Is it something you're self-inflicting? Is it somebody in your world that's inflicting harm to you? Is it you keep hanging out with this person, every time you're with this person you make foolish decisions? Is that person a bad influence? Reality check. Are you going to this certain place where you tend to do stupid things and silly things? Are you going to certain websites that cause you to get off track? Are you going to the hangout with this group of friends at this place? So it's the who, the where, and the weapon. And the weapon's the tough one usually. Because we automatically want to think the weapon is something outside of ourselves, and a lot of times the weapon's within, and it's a spiritual issue. My weapon is is me when I look in the mirror because I have low self-esteem, and it's causing me to not think very highly of myself. Then when I go out with people, I think this is the only chance I have at a relationship, so I stay with them even though they're probably not good for me. I'm in a friendship. I mean, you just name your story. But almost every one of them has a who, what the weapon is, and a where does it take place usually. And if you can help people start to at least get a grip on that, hey, I know you blame this person, but let's look at the decision that you made. I know you said this circumstance is out of your control, but really is it? Is it really just your own insecurity that's keeping you in this relationship? And if we can help people just start to break through some of that even, it's going to be the first step, the initial step of CPR to keep them going. Our goal is to help people to become like what I'm about to read. And this is out of Jeremiah 17:7. And this is God's description of kind of what it means to be healthy and to be a follower. It says this: "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when the heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." God wants us to be connected to him in a way that we don't worry and stress out, that we don't become the mess, but we're in a position to bear the fruit and help other people, to feed others, to help other people through their mess. He wants us to be grounded in him. This isn't a self-help deal. This is God help me. God help me help others. And it's got to be that connection. And when the drought comes for you personally, you're not withered. And our goal is to help other people to get this same sense of strength and connectedness to what God, the pool of life, to God, the source of life, and to get connected to a way that when the next storm comes, the next crisis happens to them, they don't fall, they don't fail, they respond. And that's how this thing grows. We don't have to worry about what's happening out there when we walk out of these doors, because we know what's happening here, that we know the source of life is in here. And that's what it's going to help us help other people. I'm not worried about out there. I am not shocked at all what's happening in our world today. You know why? Because it's happened time and time again through the history of the Bible, the history of the world. The cool thing is usually God finds a way to take those swings and those ups and those downs and use them into his advantage. It might be starting here. You might be inconvenienced. You might be uncomfortable. You might feel out of control, but that's okay. We're going to do it together. We're going to do it together. This year, we can't run from the messes anymore because we're trying to get people to this. We want people to be rooted and stable. We want to see continued growth. We want to see people not as prone to worry. And most importantly, we want to see each one of us this year to be productive, bearing fruit that matters. That's the goal for the church this year. That's our goal. If you've been triggered, I hope it's in a way that says, hey, I'm being triggered to move towards what God's doing. I'm not scared of this. I'm not afraid to talk about it. And in your small groups this week, I hope you will really have deeper conversations about really what matters, about the messes in your world, the messes in your friends' worlds, and maybe as a group of people, we can figure out how to help each other as we all remain rooted, getting our source of life from this pool of God, from God's mercy, God's grace. No longer we're going to be compassionate because we want to bless others and we want to be blessed. Who doesn't? No more stagnant growth, guys. Let's grow together. Let me just close in prayer.